Hello everybody and welcome back to the multiplayer project where, as promised, we are going to implement the update timestamp method here. And I have actually looked it up and I know how this works in SQLite, so that is wonderful. So I'm just going to close this because I removed the bottom curly brace here so that it wouldn't compile, so that I remembered that this was what I had to do. I also wrote it down, but, you know, I wanted to make sure. So, there we go. So all we need to do to update the timestamp is to call cmd.commandText, which of course is obvious, and we're going to set that to be string.format, and we're going to say update accounts. So on the table accounts, we want to set last login equal to, in single quotes, 0, which we'll parameterize in a moment, where account name equals, again in single quotes, 1. Perfect. And then we're going to pass in system.datetime.now.toString, and we're also going to pass in the account name. Wonderful. So that's our command text there. And then all we need to do down here is basically what we did right here. In fact, literally what we did right here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. We're going to try to execute a non-query command. And then we are going to write out a message if there's an exception. So that should, in theory, update our database. And I know for a fact that this does work because I tested it off camera. So I'm not going to bother with that because we have another project for today. And that project is in our client. That's right. It's everyone's favorite UI work. Huh? No? No, I think it's kind of boring too. But I kind of like designing the UIs, but actually implementing them is a little tedious for me. But that's okay. It still has to happen. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our modal window is always below everything else. So what I'm going to do to make sure that that happens, well, technically I'm not going to make sure that that happens. we can do that in a script. We can make sure that when we run it, it sets the modal window as the bottom child in the hierarchy. That's something we could do. And actually, I'll put that into our to-do. Which apparently I didn't have Visual Studio open? Apparently I didn't. Okay, so another to-do that we're going to add in here, and we might sometime have like a, honestly it'd be kind of a good thing for a live stream, where we just go through and do these to-dos. I'm pretty sure I could live stream programming. I'd have to try it. But at any rate, this would be an interesting thing to do. But for right now, the next to-do that we need to put in here is make modal window set itself to be the bottom child on start. Okay, there we go. Wonderful. That would be easy enough to do, but it's kind of out of scope of what we're looking to do right now. So right now, we're just going to create ourselves an empty here, and we are going to call this the character select screen. Wonderful. And that's literally just an empty. We are going to make it stretch across the entire screen, but we're not going to do anything else with that. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to copy the settings and the exit button here from the login screen. So we're going to select both of those, Control D to duplicate, and then place them in the character select screen. We're now going to disable the login screen for now. So all we see is this character select screen. And if we go into the game view here, we can see a little bit better what it would look like. Right now, just this. I'm going to get rid of the auto appended 1 from duplication on the settings and exit button. And we're going to want to bump the settings button up to a position of 100 because I want a button that goes in between them. We're going to duplicate that settings button. It's not going to do anything for right now. It's just going to be the on-click placeholder button, which is fine. But we're going to call this the log out button. Wonderful. Now, this button is going to be positioned at the original Y of the settings, so at 60, And we're going to change the text of this to simply read logout. Glorious. So that gets us our start over here. And then we're also going to put in 2 more buttons. So let's go ahead and duplicate the logout button or the settings button. It technically doesn't matter. And we'll get rid of that for right now. And then we will set this to be from the bottom left instead of the bottom right. And we'll position it at... Oh, actually, I want to set the X pivot to be 0.5. We'll position this at 250. And then this same Y position is fine. Everything else here is fine. So we'll do that. And then we will change this text to be create new character. Wonderful. And we'll call this the create character button. Glorious. Now we'll duplicate that, and also keep in mind that I'm duplicating these so that they have the on-click placeholder button. This is from the login screen, and we will be changing that to be from the character select screen later, but for right now, we'll just leave it like this. So we will then have this be the delete character button. Wonderful. And we will move this down to a position of 20, and we will call this, or rather change the text to delete character. Excellent. And we'll have this grayed out at first. So we'll just set the button here to not be interactable. Wonderful. And the reason that that's not interactable is because we don't have any characters. There are no characters to delete currently. We're going to need to make those characters, but for right now, this will do. So, that gets us most of our buttons, but there are 2 more things that I want to do. First off, let's duplicate the delete character button. There we go. And we are going to set that to, instead of being at the bottom left, it will be at the bottom center. We'll set its position to 60 on the Y, and the X will be at 0. And then we're going to make it a bigger button, width of 400 rather than 300, and a height of 60, so doubling that height. We are also going to make a few changes to the actual text inside of here. This is going to be size 36, slightly larger. Then we'll just have this be enter world. Fantastic. That is starting grayed out because we don't have a character selected to enter the world with. But we are also going to, well, rename this to enter world button. Wonderful. And then we're going to add a UI text mesh pro, and we're going to call this the character name text. Wonderful. And where are we going to place this? Actually, where is it right now? It's dead center. Oh yeah, I do barely see it there. Let's go ahead and change this to the outlined material so that we can see it a little bit better. This is just going to be floating over the world here, so we need to make sure that it's visible over basically everything, so the outline will help with that. And then we'll also make the font size here, actually 36 is fine, so we're just going to put this as placeholder character name. Okay, we'll change our wrapping here to disabled. I want this all to happen in the same place. And then we're also going to add in a content size fitter. And this is going to be horizontal fit preferred size. And that'll just change the size of that text box based on the size of the text that is inside of it. Wonderful. And then all we'll need to do is position it on the y-axis at about 200, except we need to set this from the bottom. There we go. There we go. That's more like it. Wonderful. So, we nearly have this done, except that was the easy part. Now, we need to make what I'm calling the character select pane. So let's go ahead and create a UI image. And I'm going to place this right below the delete character button in the hierarchy. It doesn't technically have to go here. There's no real reason for it to go here, but this is just where I want to put it. Just because it quasi makes sense to me. I don't know. It's completely arbitrary. So this will be the character select pane. Wonderful. And we're going to set this source image to be a background. And the color, we're going to have it be based off of the color of our login screen, but it will be slightly darker. It will be this color here. You can copy that if you care to, or you can just emulate it or choose an entirely different color. It really doesn't matter, but we will add an outline to it. And we will have this outline, of course, be white. We'll set it at 2 and -2. Wonderful. So that is a start there. Next up, we are going to have this be set to stretching along the left side of the screen here. We're going to move it in 10 pixels. Whoa. I did that on the character select screen. That needs to be on the character select pane. There we go. We'll move it over 10 pixels, but we need to make sure that our X pivot here is at 0. So we'll move it in 10 pixels. There we go. And from the top, 10 pixels. From the bottom, we're going to go for 110 because we have this little space for these buttons here. And we're going to make this be 500 pixels wide. Wonderful. Next up, we're going to create a UI Text Mesh Pro. Just like that. And this is going to simply read, if I can fix that, there we go. This will simply read 0 of 10 character slots in use. Wonderful. We will set this to be wrapping enabled. That is fine. We don't need this to be size 36. We'll set it to size 18. And we will also set this to be stretched across the top. So 0 from the left, 0 from the right. We want to make sure that this is centered, like so. And we will position this at -26 and a height of 18. Excellent. Technically the height doesn't really matter, but it actually might matter for the... yeah, that might actually matter for the scroll rect that we're going to put here. Speaking of which, we should put in a scroll view. We're going to call this, though, first the slot label. Excellent. And then we will go ahead and create a UI scroll view. Excellent. Now, this scroll view, of course, is going to need to change. We're going to set this to stretch. From the left, we're going to stretch 5 pixels. From the right, 5 pixels. From the bottom, 5 pixels. From the top, we're going to go 50 pixels so that we don't overwrite this little header area. Wonderful. Now, we are going to go ahead and turn off the horizontal scrolling because we are not going to be needing that. We'll change our movement type to be clamped. Inertia doesn't really matter at this point. I think that's all fine, but we want to up the scroll sensitivity to 100. Excellent. And then that's pretty much all we need here. That should be fine. So let's go into the scroll view here, and you can see that it, by default, put in a few components here, a viewport and a couple of scroll bars. Inside of that viewport, there is an image and a mask. That's fine. We're not going to touch this. This is exactly as we want it to be. And then down here in the content, this is where we're going to change things. So we're going to put in a vertical layout group and no padding, but we're going to have 5 pixels of spacing. Child alignment will be upper center, and we will have it control the child size, width, and height. And we're also going to put in a content size fitter, and we're going to say it's unconstrained on the horizontal axis, but preferred size on the vertical axis. So if we head in here, we can now see this is a height of 0, because there's nothing in it. Let's go ahead and put something in it. We're going to put a UI image. Excellent. And this is a height of 0, which is not necessarily what we want, but we're going to call this character slot. Excellent. Now, we're going to add in a couple of things here, but first thing I want to do is make this be a kind of lighter gray. This shade of gray, to be precise. This is 160, 160, 160, or A0, 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 if you prefer the hexadecimal notation. So that's the color that's going to be. We're also going to make this have a layout element, because we want to put in a preferred height for this of 150. Excellent. So you can now see that we've got this box here, and if we duplicate it, then it puts in another, and another, and another, and another, and another, and it's just completely variable, and it can change all of that. I do recall, though, that there's one more thing we want to change here. We want to change the vertical scroll bar to be permanent, if I recall correctly. Let me just double check that. Yep. And we want the horizontal scroll bar to be auto-hided. We don't want to expand that viewport. So if we just duplicate this character slot a bunch of times and run this, first off, it's going to tell us that it can't make a connection. That's expected. Yeah, server connection interrupted. That's fine. Server is not up. But you can see here, oh, we've got a small issue here in that we're not quite the right height, but we can scroll this, and technically we don't need the scroll bar. This is something that we're going to add to our to-dos, and actually let's do that right now while I'm thinking about it. Let's fire up our to-dos and make the character select scroll view only scroll with wheel / scroll bar, no click and drag. Okay, because that's something I'd like to do, but that's something that will require potentially a little bit of research and figuring out how to do that. So these character slots are going to be quite simple, and all we're going to need to do here is put in a couple of things. Like, realistically, all we need is a single UI text mesh pro, and this is going to be size 36 is fine, and we're going to make this be stretched across the entire thing, and we will place this middle center, and let's just set our color. If I can actually, I don't want to set the color just yet. I want to grab this and set this color. I believe this is just a slight gray here, 210, 210, 210. And that's just because this is essentially like placeholder text. Create a character. Now, if there's a character in that slot, we'll change this color to be white, and we'll have it be, you know, like something along the lines of ASDF, because that's what we're calling everything. Level 1 town, or, you know, whatever the status message that we want it to be is. But for right now, that is not what we're going to do. We're going to just have it be like this. Wonderful. So if we now make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we're not going to do it this way, but if we have 10, then we can see that we've got 10 character slots here. Yeah, server connection interrupted. That's to be expected. Now, I do want to fix this slight issue here. And we can do that if we go to the scroll view and we change, let's see here, there's something that we need, oh, I remember what it is. We need to go to the viewport and change the bottom to be 0, like that. So that puts it, instead of being 17 pixels up, that puts the viewport right there along the bottom. And I believe we also need to change the vertical scroll bar here. Yes, indeed. The horizontal scroll bar is always going to be auto-hidden. So we do not need that. Technically, we may even be able to set it to disabled. No, it's automatically turning itself back on. Okay. So that'll always be hidden. And we are just going to check this. Wonderful. Okay, so that is essentially the bare bones of our character select screen. I'm just going to get rid of these because we're going to auto-populate this based on data we receive from the server. So that should be fine. Now we've got a little bit of extra time because I was expecting this to take about 10 minutes longer than it did, which is kind of interesting. But that does give us the time to double check on that database thing that we just changed. So let's turn on our login screen here and turn off our character select screen. And actually, I want to do a little bit of hooking up here. So let's hop into our net manager. And let's see here. Yeah, uimanager.lobby. This should be character select screen. Excellent. And then in our UI manager, we are going to need to set up the public character select screen. Character select screen, like this. Excellent. Now, of course, it doesn't know about a character select screen, so let's go into our UI here. We'll create a new folder, character select, and we will create a new C# script character select screen. Excellent. And now we're not going to really do anything with that just yet. That'll be something that'll happen next episode for sure. But the character select screen here, we'll go ahead and add that component here. And then we'll tell the UI manager what the character select screen is. Excellent. And so now, when we successfully log in, the net manager will tell the UI screen to, the UI character select screen to become active. Wonderful. So, if we go into our server here, and technically what we really need to do here is open this folder in File Explorer, and then we will go into the channel MMO server, bin, debug, netcore app. Okay, and then this is going to be the MMO server DB that we're interested in here. So that'll be wonderful, and let's go ahead and just fire up that database browser. There we go, and we'll bring this in. So we can see if we go to our data here that the last time we logged in was yesterday at 9:02 a.m. Wonderful. So now let's fire up the server. Like so. And then we will fire up the client. Wait for that encryption handshake. That could be a little while. Thanks, Unity, for causing issues. And we should probably put that into our to-dos, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Let's go ahead and say another to-do is switch RSA libraries so Unity isn't so slow. There we go. Encryption handshake is complete, so we'll log in. Successfully logged in, it fired up this scene. Wonderful. And then we are going to hop into our database browser. Well, look at that. It's exactly the same. It didn't update. Well, no, it did update. We just need to refresh this. So we'll refresh it. And bam, 8/6/2020 at 9:32 a.m. Perfect. That is exactly what we wanted. Now, this isn't currently updating our last IP. And that might be something that we want to do, and we kind of have time to do that. So let's hop into our MMO server here, and I kind of want to create a couple of generic functions here. Like, I want to change the update timestamp function and genericize this. So we'll do a public static void update data, and we're going to say string on table. We're going to say string set field. We're going to say string equal to string where field, and then string equals value. Okay. So there we go. That will do. And all we need to do is just copy this in here. There we go. And then we need to change our command text to genericize this. So we will do so, and this will be cmd.commandText equals string.format, and we're going to format in update, and then this would be 0, which is on table, and then we're going to say set 1 for set field. Next, we're going to say equal to 2. And note the single quotes. Those are important. So this needs to be set field equal to, this would be equals value, right? Hang on. Set field, no, this is equal to. Equal to. Where field is then going to be where 3. So this would be where field and then equals and then 4. Not 45, 4. There we go. Equals value. So that gives us a generic function here. And we can actually change update timestamp to utilize this function. And so we shall. So we're just going to call update data, and this is going to be accounts. Actually, I'm going to get rid of all of this because I want to utilize some of the information in this so that I don't forget it. So update data, and this is going to be on table accounts, set field last login, and then we're going to set that field equal to system.time, or rather system.datetime .now.toString, not too short time string, just toString, where field, and this would be account name, equals value, and this is going to be account name. Okay, so this uses our generic data now. This is just a nice little shortcut. And we're going to do the same thing for last IP. So, public static void update IP, or rather last IP. This is going to be string last IP, string account name. So we'll just take that in. And we're going to do basically the same thing. We're going to do update data. And this is going to be on the table accounts, where field last IP, that's how I spelled it, right? Database Explorer? Yes. Last IP. We're going to set that equal to last IP, where field account name equals account name. Okay, wonderful. So that should update our IP as well. So let's hop into the server here, and we're going to also say database manager.update last IP, and we're going to have this be client session .address .toString. And of course, we're also going to need to pass in account name. Now we could combine those together, but I think for right now we'll leave it like that. And then if we run this, this should, in theory, update both of those. So let's go ahead and run this, and let's check the output log on this server. Okay, port 57510. Excellent. We last connected on 59572. That's fine. So we'll do ASDF, ASDF. Our encryption handshake is complete. So we will log in. And we ran into an issue with this. SQL logic table. Oh, of course, it's accounts, plural. Yep, I am a moron. Okay, we'll try this again. The server is up now. ASDF, ASDF. Actually, I think I typoed that. ASDF. There we go. We're waiting for the encryption handshake. There it is. Successfully logged in. And then if we check this, this should say that our last login was at 939 and from port 6150. Okay. Refresh that. 939, 6150. Perfect. So now we have a generic data, or a generic method that allows us to update our data. That is perfect. And with that, I think that we're pretty much done with our goals for this episode. It's a bit of a short one, but that's not necessarily the worst thing. So next episode, we are going to start working... Actually, it's probably going to be UI again, mostly. We're going to start working on character creation, and it's going to be super basic to start with. Like, super basic. All we are trying to really do is get the client to communicate particular things with the server to respond, and then after that we're going to be looking at populating the characters in the character select, and then logging in after that. But that's several episodes out, to be sure. For now, though, you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time when we start working on character creation.